Right, yeah.
in our room, and yeah, it's gonna be a tough day today, I think. Still, that's just the way it is. You good weekend?
Very, very hang on, I'll get the words out. Very busy.
Oh, busy good or busy bad?
Yeah. Oh, good, I suppose. You should have called me. Yeah, busy with bamboo. So
Oh,
trying to
okay,
do. And we
all
went
right.
out last. We went to the neighbours last night. And
Got trolleyed.
yeah,
Not
shouldn't
to
have
put
done
a finer point on it.
it. Shouldn't have done it. Never mind.
Never should, mate. Never should. That's always the way, isn't it? We always forget.
Well, I'm a little jaded as a result, but
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to the week. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a tricky week for me. I've got to be honest, because I'm flying tomorrow,
Okay.
um, which means that tomorrow and Wednesday are out. So then it breaks up the week significantly enough to make it a little bit of a difficult trading environment. And to be honest, I'll show you in a moment, but the markets have flown out the traps so so aggressively that actually trading to the upside is our only option, but maybe not the cheapest way to try and trade. I think we've
I'm in a great spot right now.
yeah, was it? Oh, right, that's the wrong one. I didn't want that. Hold on. Let me change my screen. Yeah, sure. We got pretty confusing. I mean, there was a moment here that I really wanted to trade. I don't know if you remember this, but there was we were watching this market on a 15-minute chart right at these lows down here. And I wanted to go long, but my problem was I had this bar here.
Ah, yes, I remember. Yep.
Yeah, so I was keen to go long, but then I had that bar there, so I didn't really have a way to get in. And since then, the market just hasn't looked back. You consider that point, it was a considerable low. And since that point, as I say, it hasn't looked back. It's up from that particular point well over 100 pips. And now it looks like a bad decision having not got into it, which it was, to be fair. I'd marked my levels, and anything but this bar would have got me in. But this bar was so aggressive and so high. I mean, it wasn't even sort of like, if it had just drifted to this point, I would have felt very very differently about it. But the way it was just a hideous bar. And it was the Brexit week. This is all last week, which we'll get to some more Brexit stuff later. But it was all last week. Bar like that. On top of that, we consider that that was on the 14th, and the pound at that particular time on the 14th was also starting to pick up, to the upside as well. The pound was in I guess a bit of a holding pattern, but it had already rallied to the upside. And where's the 14th? This is the 14th. It was already sort of like starting to show signs and signals for upside. So looking for FTSE longs wasn't really an option for me. But subsequently, I've missed the trade to the upside on the first way round. And it's going to be tricky for me now, to try and get in. Also, on top of that, I remember telling you about the price action that I got as well from the FTSE, which was on the futures. Was Have they filled it in now? Oops, that's the wrong one. On the futures, it was this gap. That was the problem. And if you look at price on the cash, this area is up here, and this area should be, way below. This point here is actually an equal high at this point. This point here is the same as this point up here. If you look on the cash, I'll show you actually. I'll show you the UK 100 as well. So the UK 100 has hit effectively what is this high, which happened over here in February, February the 15th of February. Bit of a crazy price move this morning, isn't really too concerning, but yeah, but the point is that where price is rejected is the high from in February. But when we look at the futures don't show that. The futures show the price that was rejected as a part of this month. and it's because of this huge gap, because of the options expiration and stuff like that. So the charts were difficult to read because of this. The Brexit made it difficult to read, and that one bar made it difficult to read. So subsequently, I've missed a move, and the only option really I now have is to wait for a half decent retracement. Now, whether that happens, I'm not 100% on. I suspect it probably will, and I did some work on some of this. The problem is drawing in these lines here is that they don't relate to anything. You have to draw it on the cash, but I always look at the futures. So we will look on the futures, but this is a worthwhile Fibonacci to draw from the very, very low to the very, very high. And the reason I say that is that we really did meet the low of the week. Outside of any other price action, and the high of the week outside any other price action. So a decent place to actually use our Fibonacci tool. And the Fibonacci tool suggests that there would be something of a 38% retracement to this point here, which brings us kind of back to this point for a test. So I think that would be my most favored point. The 38% retracement, somewhere around about 71.12. Probably the weekly pivot will trump that at 71.21. So it's got to come back here before I'm anywhere interested in going long this market. But that's the only option I've got, mate, is to look for the longs, but just not at this price.
Yeah, well, as I said to you, I think it was mid last week, you're starting to look very rectangularish, if that's such a word.
Yes.
And you're now right at the top of that rectangle. So
that's right.
Impossible to go long, but for me, I'm looking for shorts, at least down to those pivots. That's me. That's not you, obviously. You'd like to see it down there to maybe get yourself a price, but you wouldn't be looking to trade it down there.
So interestingly, what you're saying is you'd like to trade. Your preference would have been to trade this short to this point.
Yeah,
and I like that. I really like that. So what would you need to see that would suggest to you that was on like a 4-hour bar reversal, or would an hourly bar do?
Hourly bar's fine. First thing I'd like to see is maybe a double top, maybe a bearish engulfing bar, maybe one of your evening stars, anything that suggests potential reversal there. Even if this was a high test bar, and then I wouldn't trade that bar. I would then look for a lower high. Yeah. So on a 4-hour chart, that's probably going to be a little bit tricky because you're then getting a bit close to the daily pivot. Yeah. But on an hour chart, that would be a reasonable option, or a 30-minute chart would be a reasonable option. So that's what I'd be looking for there.
I mean, I like this. I like this 23% retracement as well as a potential area, because it does have some evidence here that is a hold of a price, and also it is the 23% retracement. The fact it's between two pivots is a little bit problematic, but it might be that we have to let these charts settle down again. We got more Brexit, which I'll talk about in a minute, after we've gone through your charts, and it might be that we need another week just to allow some settling down with the markets. Very, very aggressive, and this is well worth noting for the listeners. I did want to bring this up for everybody because I think this is quite key and important. When you see a trend, now we know that trends are structured around extensions and retracements, and extensions and retracements, and extensions, and the next leg should be a retracement if this extension's finished, which potentially it should have done with the highs, where we are. The key aspect of the strength of a trend is where it retraces to. So the most regular place a trend will retrace to, an extension will retrace, or price will retrace to, is where it's come from, the previous level of support. So because this would be an example, this was a previous level of support. Now, when the market came down and bounced up again, that was the natural point for it to get to. but it could have got a little bit lower. In fact, I suppose in some respects you could argue there, but because price actually came through, it touched both those levels before settling on the lower line. But what's interesting about this one is it was the retracement came nowhere near where it came from, and it came nowhere near the second point where it could come from. It was the third point that was not even a closing price, but a high. I suppose it would look different on a different time frame. But the high of this whole range was the point that it bounced from, and that really does tell us a lot about the strength of the trend and the strength of the market. Which again is why this is going to be a tricky one now to catch. I think it really does need to settle down. I think before there's going to be any simple decisions to be made. Easy would be the wrong word, but any simple decisions to be made, it's got to settle right down.
And as you say, we've still got to negotiate Wednesday at this point.
Yes, well, maybe even tomorrow, but yeah.
Oh, tomorrow, is it? I thought it was Wednesday.
It could be, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about different possible connotations in a moment, but let's have a look through your charts, and we'll come back to the Brexit discussion, because there's a lot actually that we probably should know about this week.
All right, mate. I will do just that. And with any luck, you'll be seeing my screen sometime soon. Yet I can't see it on the... Yeah, there we go. All right, Aussie first up. Aussie, and at this time of week, what I'm really looking for is to compare the majors and what they're doing, whether they're looking to bounce off resistance or support, whether they're trending, whether they're ranging, all those sorts of things. And then I kind of work my way into the week as a result of what I find. And what I find here is pretty much what was expected, I suppose. And that was, once you come inside, or once you've come back inside a range, which is depicted by my little rectangle here, and the second false break to the downside, I'm always looking for a retracement back and an entry long. Now, we got that on Thursday of last week, but impossible to trade that for me. The candle's way too big on a Friday morning in particular, which is exactly where that happened. That's Thursday day candle, which is exactly what we're looking for, a retracement back to here and then an entry. Couldn't find it, but I'll show you. And we spoke about Aussie CAD last week. 3 attempts I had to get into Aussie CAD long, and we actually found the way on Friday. I did say I'd sit up and wait for that one on Friday, and I did, and we'll show you the result of that in a tick. So the Aussie looks to be headed to this area, and it'd be very unusual from where I sit if we didn't at least test this trend line, and in extension, I suppose, the monthly pivot. If we've got enough strength to get through that area and then retest it, there may well be an entry long yet to come on the Aussie. I would like to see that happen, however. I'd like to see this area tested, then form another higher low, and on the back side of that trend line would be a perfect spot for that. So break here, find the resistance in the monthly pivot, bounce off it, then look for a higher low in this area here. That would be a really good place to find an entry long on the Aussie. Is that feasible? Look, everything's possible. Feasible is another story. As you can see, we're in a clear downtrend here. We've got lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, and this now becomes the question: are we going to test these highs, the previous highs? And that's exactly where my first target would be if we were to get into this long at the point I was talking about before. So that's the question mark on the Aussie at the moment. Obviously, the other thing I would be looking for is hitting that resistance level, then diving back underneath this trend line and testing it from the bottom side. That would give me the exact opposite bias, and I would then look to trade it short. So that's the Aussie for the week. Yes, definitely at this moment looking long to here, and I don't see me trading against that at this point. Euro dollar, look, it's not dissimilar in many ways. I'll just go a little bit tighter on this go to the daily chart and give you a better picture of that. Exactly the same scenario. We've put in a second false break. This one, interestingly, a lower low, but we're back inside here. Didn't get the retracement back to where we would like it to be, and for this reason we haven't had a higher low yet, in my opinion. Some would say we have. That's not the way I measure a low, but anyway, the important part here is that this red line here, which I mention just about every day that I trade when we're in this vicinity, it's 113.60. It's the level I believe is par for the course, I'll put it that way, on euro dollar in the last few years. And the reasoning behind that goes back to here, really, when we had this crash from 2014 straight down. We're talking parity here, it didn't happen. We're talking parity again here, it didn't happen. And every time we bounce off a level, we seem to come back and hit this 113.60 level. And it's happened time and time again till we smash through it. In the lead up to, this is post Briggs, I can't remember the circumstances here. Why we rallied. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but we put in a very strong bar here and the market rallied back to the 124.50 area. We've since come back all of this time later, and look what we're doing. We're doing exactly the same on the support side as we were doing on the resistance side. So, question for each and every one of us is, how long can this support hold? And the answer, a bloody long time. Perhaps. We shall see. So really, I don't have any preconceived ideas of moving out of this zone for any time soon, except if there's a major change in the Brexit situation. So, and of course that can happen very, very easily. So that's where I'm at. We're bang on that level, and I don't see any way for me to trade this other than towards it, if you understand my meaning there. So if I'm below 113.60, I'm looking to trade to 113.60, and I'm probably looking to trade off it. If we break it and retest it, I'm looking to trade from the next resistance level back towards it. So I'm not looking to trade away from it unless I get a break and retest, or I get absolute assurity here that we're going back to the bottom. So that's the line in the sand for me. For now, I need to see what it's going to do at this level when it hits here, and for that reason, there's really no trade available to me. Interesting to note that this level here, this trend line, broken, look, for all intents and purposes as though this was a false break, but I think probably the Brexit situation brought us back above the trend line. We've since retested it, and the obvious result is we're heading towards resistance, and that's this area here. So I'll be watching to see what happens here. If there's rejection and sign of reversal, we'll go that way. If there's a break and a retest, we'll look to go that way. If I'm going away from 113.60 at any stage, I'll be taking profit very quickly. So I won't be looking for long runs here. I'll be just looking for the shortest run to a resistance level. A nice confluence area there would be the start for this one. And going back in this direction, well, you'd probably find support here. You'll definitely find support in the weekly pivot. So they're the areas that I'd be targeting if I'll be looking to trade short or indeed long. Pound is a beast. It really is. Brexit driven without question, and you can see the volatility that we've been going through in the past few weeks. Big bull bar, really big bull bar in last week's trading. It's hard to ignore that, but we're at a resistance level once again, and I can't really trade at this level. You know, if I'm bullish, I can't trade at this level. I can probably trade against another currency, but at this level, I just can't jump in. It's too strong a resistance area for me, and that bar is too big to trade as well. You know, you after you see something like that, you're thinking one of two things: consolidation or retracement. I'm not thinking carry on from here at all, and for that reason, I'm only thinking if I wanted to trade the pound that I need to come back to a support level, and I'm not that keen to do that either, I must say. Interestingly, again on this chart, the daily chart, it's kind of a ping pong match here. Again, you can see that we're in a strong bull trend, but we haven't been able really to smash this last high. So is this the point of reversal? We've certainly got a resistance trend line as well, so it's a confluence area through here, and we've ducked back below it, and we've retested it from below. I'll just blow that up a little bit so that you can see it clearer. So we've broken back below it, and we've retested it from below. That's a little bit bearish for me. We've also come across today's daily pivot, but to jump into this short on that candle, 100 pips, actually there's plenty of room back to this trend line. So that's not out of the question. If I was to trade the daily bar, though, I want to trade this one tomorrow. I don't think we're going to see on a Monday a big move to take the low out here. The weekly pivot's in the way as well. I'll look at this on the smaller time frame. So maybe I am a little bit biased to the short side here today on cable. I'll keep my eye on it, and really the only way I want to trade it is short, but only down to maybe the weekly pivot in the first instance, where I certainly look to take profit. A call going to the crosses. The Aussie CAD, we spoke about the Aussie CAD all of last week. You'll recall that I traded long here, no entry. I traded long here, no entry. And on Friday, the best bar of all came along, a rejection bar of the monthly pivot, put my entry above the weekly pivot, and we got taken in on Friday, closed just around about the break-even level. And this morning we're having a little bit of a run at these highs, and if we can get through them, happy days. I haven't taken any profit, but I have moved my stop to entry. So I'm just looking for this to break through. If it doesn't, and it looks like it's coming back, I'll probably just close the trade, because it can obviously go off this level and back below my stop, or well, my stop at entry now, but below where my stop would have been. So a little bit of a inverted head and shoulders look about this, and that's why I'm kind of keen just to let it run. At some stage, I think this can actually break out. It looked like being a false break for all intents and purposes of this level as well, but that's been cancelled very much so by the last two bars. Break back above it, close above the weekly pivot, and now looks to be having a good crack at these highs. If we can get through it, this may turn out to be a pretty good trade. If you look at the bigger picture, we've got about 14 odd pips to here, and if we get clear of that level, we've got pretty much blue skies up to here. So that's a take profit level, and if we can get through that, that's probably a close level for me on Aussie CAD. So hopefully we're headed in that direction, and nothing to do on that except wait and watch. Mate, that's about it. We're open. How are we looking on the FTSE?
The FTSE's just started, coming off a shade. It's not too. I've just got the news on in the background here, so let me just turn that down a bit. Yeah, it's coming off a shade. I'll show you where we're at right now. By all intents and purposes, it looks like we probably will get that weakness this morning. Certainly for a small period. And let me give you my screen.
So a bearish engulfing bar to kick us off. Good.
Yeah, bearish engulfing bar to kick us off, which looks good. This is the weekly high. This is last week's high. So coming through this level, I think, will be the first point for the bulls to kind of start to lose a bit of confidence. They have already traded this in the Asian market, you know, as price opened up straight away this morning overseas, in the, as I say, in the Asian time frame. the market did pop forward, and we've already tested this particular high of last week once, and it held fairly well. So maybe we get that double top that you talked about. Maybe it gives away that little bit earlier. There's certainly enough velocity to the upside to suggest that we would start to pick up a bit of volatility. But what's quite interesting is when we start to kind of list the potential catalysts for this volatility. I think that the key chart will be the 4 hour, because this hourly, yes, it's holding up. It's looking a little bit heavy. It's looking a little bit bearish. We'll bring up the stocks in a second to see what. Well, not in a second. It'll have to be in about 15 minutes, just to see how the market did open up. But I suspect we'll probably get slightly bearish breadth this morning as we kind of kick off. Looks like the daily pivot will be a first point of target for many people, so we'll see if it reaches down to that point. As I say, I quite like this 23% retracement into this area, or maybe even the weekly pivot, but there would certainly be a suggestion this morning that we probably would break through this point. I think that there's enough resistance up at this point to bring us down, certainly probably more than we are now, but you never know. It might well hold it, and as you said before, the double top might actually appear, and then markets start to drift to the downside. The 4 hour is the interesting chart, in my opinion. The 4 hour is the one that, if we start to see a negative bar, would suggest that downside would probably come a little bit more readily. Now, there is also a little trend line here on the 15 that the market needs to take out, which is this one here, which it leaves us, right on top of. So there's certainly an area of confluence at this particular point that would probably be significant if it broke down. Certainly for those late, the traders that are late in the game. It's a very late area to get in. But I think what's quite interesting is the low volatility. I think that's quite significant. What's gonna really start to drive the market, and when I consider the news and data that's out there right now, the China deal. Now, I don't know if you know this or you've heard about this, but from what I gather, we're probably not going to get any kind of announcement until May or June. I don't know whether that's correct or not, but I was under the impression it would be the end of this month.
I don't know.
Well, it sounds like it might be to the end of May or June, and if that's the case, then that kind of puts the market a little bit on hold, for driving forward. But by the same token, there's enough positivity out there to suggest that this would not necessarily be a place to start thinking this market is turning around. I would just suggest that any moves to the downside will be a kind of buy the dip scenario, and it's just then ascertaining where does that dip come from. The daily pivot is a first obvious point because it's so it's such an easy point to see on your charts, but really you've got to consider price, and price had to get through here to go to the upside. So I would suggest that might be another bounce point, and it held at this point. Now that is a significant area because this is only a 15-minute chart, but it held, and it took off from that particular point. So I think this is where the structure of the upside really lies, and that would be the point of interest for me right now. If it dips down to the weekly pivot, then I would suggest that may just be as labeled a dip, and then we end up maybe coming back up to this point. Anything below these areas here, anything below the weekly pivot, that would suggest to me that the short-term trend has changed, and we might even get a better price. But I would be very suspicious to say that we're going to come much below, somewhere around about here. Now, again, I want to bring this 4-hour chart up because the 4-hour chart just brings us, again, just below the weekly pivot at 38% retracement of last week's range. This is the area that I think is of the highest interest because it is where the 4-hour charts, I guess, upper structure lies. The lower part of that structure would be it for me. I think if it came down 60 60, let's call it 70 pips, and through this particular point, that would suggest that the trend and the bias to the upside has significantly changed, and I don't think we should be looking for upside anymore. So I am looking for upside. I am looking for long. Will we get it today? Maybe. Certainly as the market opens up this morning, there's a bit of profit taking going on right now. So
I can't get that rectangle out of my head. That's a fairly clear image.
Yeah, well, let's bring up the cash, because this is the cash futures hybrid, if you like, and it gives you a little bit. I suppose the rectangle then would be probably more kind of seen easier on the daily. You might see this a little bit easier on the daily, and I think that's what we have to look at if we're considering this as a rectangle. Then I would suggest that it's probably.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a little bit tighter than that, but it's certainly there.
Yeah, maybe there.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is the case, and I think that if we start to burst through that upper line, which I think my suspicion is we probably will.
Yeah.
When it happens, I'm not 100%, but I think we probably will. And at that point, then I think we've got some open water to really start to look for some significant upside, which would, in my opinion, lie probably around about this particular trend line, because you can see the significance of this box. You know, this box kind of lies here, so there is some resistance over here. But if it gets through that point, you've got to say next point of resistance is going to be somewhere in about this price point, maybe this price point, depending on where it meets the trend line. So I think this trend line becomes the next significant area. But bringing this onto a weekly chart, I think is also another a chart with a lot of information on it, really kind of significant chart, because when again I look at this, I've got a few things that I spot on the weekly chart. The first thing is that there is this price point that has taken out, it's tested, and it's gone. Now the second thing, which I think is really, it could actually be the significant aspect of this, which tells me patience is going to be really key and pivotal here. This to me does look like a left shoulder, and now I could be completely wrong on this. This looks like a right shoulder, and this looks like it's forming. Sorry, this looks like a head, and this looks like it's forming the right shoulder. Now, the reason I say this is significant is that when we count the weeks here, we've really got maybe coming down one. Let's forget the one coming down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it comes down again. Now, if we again forget the one going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that really suggests there's at least another week or two before we start to test the highs again of this box. So this would put me on hold for this week. You know, I'd like to see the body of this bar retraced into. Now I'm going to do a quick fib on that as well, because this is another kind of little point of knowledge that people, it's well worth you having in your bank. It is highly probable that the market tests the range of the bar, the body of the bar. Highly probable. Now, if we do a fib on just the body of this weekly bar, that really gives us, when we bring in some of the shorter term time frames here, drag that along, that really would start to give us some retracements into areas that would suggest that the 4-hour chart maybe would hold around about, well, 60% looks low there actually, but if we look at this at 50%, maybe 38%, that's 71.95, and I'm going to bring in the pivots back again. In fact, this is the significant one. 71.84, remember that one? 71.84 is that weekly pivot. Now we're going to bring that clean chart back in again. Oops. And I've lost my weekly lines, which is annoying. Actually, was it on Here's this one. 71.84 is our line. The body of the weekly bar. gives us 71.84 on the 50% retracement.
Interesting.
So the 71.84 is the is the line in the sand that's kind of glaring. Now, the thing about all this, and this is what we've got to be aware, that technical analysis drives us towards finding the most probable point of support in an uptrend. Now, that's quite low, but that is the last probable point, in my opinion. 71.84 is the last probable point. Doesn't mean that it won't dip a bit, but closing under that particular level, certainly under this 71.76, which is not that much further below. That's why I'm saying that significantly changes the bias of upside. So 71.4 is the lowest end. Now, whether we get that or not, I don't know. But this is proof that that we have to trust our technical analysis, because I drew this trend line earlier, and you can see that with the trend line, not this one, sorry, on the futures I drew on the futures, and the trend line here on the futures is providing this support line. So doing all the numbers is really, really important. Doing all the kind of the lines and case studies on what could happen is really, really important. Now, the lack of volatility is the problem. The lack of volatility is not suggesting a significant move down, and that's where patience is the key. Because I think when it comes down to it, we need to see whether the market will give us that lower line. But if it won't give us that lower line, sorry, I just realised my mic was really high there. If that doesn't give us that lower line, then we need to look out for signs and signals that it's dipped significantly enough to a point that would still be an attractive point to take a trade. Now, that would start to suggest that we can discard, if you like, the daily pivot, because that's going to look kind of high when we look at this 4-hour chart again. If we're looking in this area on the 4-hour, the daily pivot's starting to look kind of high. Weekly pivot is my first point because of that. If there was somewhere in between there I quite liked, but somewhere between these points, the weekly pivot, and then down to this particular point. So there's 3 areas that I would consider, and then it's just down to what is giving us the buy signal. And the reason this is important is because on the 15-minute chart, we've now got a buy signal. But because it's not at an area that I'm interested in trading, this is something that I would leave. Even if it takes off, it's just too high for me.
Absolutely agree with that. Not trading into that resistance is a time-honoured and well-chosen method of not losing money.
Absolutely, mate. And you know what? This is the thing. The environment that we have right now is quite equity-centric, because the central banks. Hey, Mohammed, how you doing, buddy? The central banks are putting a lot of their policies into a really dovish stance, and that is very supportive of equities, which again, decreases the chance of the volatility kind of pick up. So it would suggest that people would be looking for softer areas to try and trade this long, because the environment is there for it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go just yet, because there is, and we need to get to the news in a second, but there are some central bank announcements this week. I think we've got the Fed out later this week. We've got, as we discussed a little while ago, this Brexit that is on the horizon as well. So I think, just a little bit more confidence from some of these investors will probably start to push this forward. But this is why I would suspect we are probably on hold for a couple of days, and why maybe Monday, Tuesday this week might not be the best possible chance to trade. It may do, because the price may come low enough for us to consider, but it might be that we kind of chop around for a couple of days before actually getting a sense of timing for the direction. The direction is definitely upside until it takes out the level I said, but it's just about timing, and I think, from my perspective, timing is probably going to be mid to late week rather than early.
Look, definitely, it's a latter part of the week kind of week, because there's a whole lot of news. There's FOMC, there's BOJ, oh no, we've already had BOJ. There's all sorts of interest rate announcements coming out. The Brexit situation, it's all going to happen in the latter part of this week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, most definitely. That's where it's all going to happen. But interestingly, and I find a good way to go into that particular scenario is to have a look at what those important events are likely to bring. What sort of an outcome are we likely to be looking at? So positioning ourselves, if you like, to take advantage of what the market thinks may happen in the back end of the week. So that's probably a good way to adopt a bias on a lot of these crosses as well. So, go to your Forex Factory and have a look and see what's forecast versus previous, and then draw some sort of conclusion as to what the market might think about that and trade in that direction. I think that's probably wise counsel.
Yeah, I agree, mate.
So I guess mate, we better address it. The B word. What has happened?
So Theresa May, I guess already, is looking to bring back the deal again. So we're looking for third time lucky. She has been rallying the troops on the weekend, trying to convince people that they need to take this Brexit deal. The people she needs on board, the DUP and the ERG, the European Research Group. ERG are hard Brexiteers, if you like, to use a term that is bandied around a lot. They are hard Brexiteers. They are the group that would be quite comfortable with a no-deal scenario, and probably would be, on the whole, I should say, they're the group with a no-deal scenario. There are a few members of the ERG that don't see no-deal as a sensible option, but there's probably enough in there that would be quite happy with a hard Brexit no-deal, and probably would prefer that to be the case as well. So she's got some work to do to convince those guys. She lost by over 100 votes last time, so there's a lot of work to do. But the one thing that might get this through is the fact that there are now whisperings from the Labour side. Our local MP, Peter Kyle, really good guy. He is looking to put forward an amendment next week which would put a referendum, which would back a referendum, a second referendum. Now, Labour are now talking about backing that. They did talk about backing it before, but there was an amendment put through Parliament last week that people didn't back. This time, John McDonnell, the Labour Chancellor, is suggesting that they would back that amendment, and they would back that specific amendment. So it looks like the second referendum has gathered enough support in Parliament to be fairly close. There would be a close vote on that. There would be a chance that actually could pass. And if that's the case,
but actually, before you go, I also heard a whisper that a lot of the no voters, or those who voted her down in the previous two votes, have suggested they will trade their votes for her resignation.
Yes,
really?
That has. That is true. That is true. That's also been said. And this is the way this is all going. Is that it's all kind of like behind closed doors stuff about what's going to be acceptable. What will the government give? What will Theresa May give? Will she give her job? Will they give money? The DUP, there's been talk that the DUP will be getting some more money to get their backing. Now, they've denied that, but that's always a potential way for governments to gain support, is by bribing people. So there's a potential bribe for the DUP. There's a potential bribe for the ERG if Theresa May does agree to step down. There's also the Labour leadership have also said that they will back her deal if she accepts that there will be a referendum on the deal. So there's a few different scenarios that could get the deal through, but Theresa May, for one, has got to agree to them, and two, she's got to make sure that she's agreeing to the right one of those. Which one does she agree to? She might have to agree to at least two of them. She might have to agree to give the DUP some money and agree to step down. But there was no kind of hint that she was looking to step down the last time. So she seems to be reveling in this job. Now, I know that Theresa May has got an incredible sense of duty, and maybe that's what this is down to. Maybe she's just barefaced belligerent. Who knows? Who knows what it is? But I think so. To get her to leave her job with an acceptance, I'm not sure whether she would go with that or not, but she may. So the possibility that it gets through has increased. But when you consider what numbers she was losing by before, she's still got a lot of work to do. There's going to have to be quite a few rabbits pulled out of the hat to get it through. And if it gets through, it will be skin of the teeth stuff.
Okay, sorry, you go.
Well, I was going to say, if it doesn't get through, the second referendum scenario becomes pretty unavoidable. I would probably suggest. I think that is going to be the next thing that would happen.
Okay, so in terms of extension to Article 50, apparently from what I read, the EU looked to be agreeing to that, but there's no official word on that. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. And the thing is, it only takes one country to veto that, and I think that there's still probably some work to be done on that as well, because they still want to know what is it they are agreeing to. You know, why are they agreeing to an extension of Article 50? And they will only agree to an extension if the likelihood is that the deal improves on both sides. I don't think they're going to agree to extending Article 50 for, let's say, a hard Brexit to still be kind of, you know, put down on the table. They might extend Article 50 for a referendum, or they might extend it for further negotiations of Theresa May's deal that's already gone, you know, which will get through tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on when she pulls it. So there's a few things, but I think the other significant aspect of this is that Theresa May has said that she will not take this to Parliament unless she thinks she's got enough support for it. So there's still a chance that you know, the vote is pulled.
Right. Watch this space yet again, I suppose.
Yeah, and this is why back to, you know, the trading scenarios, it is going to make trading quite difficult again, I think, this week, to try and get a decent sense of direction. I mean, the FTSE is continuing to hold on. It's softened a little bit, but it's continuing to hold on. When we look at this price action, it's still moving to the upside and still getting its closes. The last 5-minute bar, which doesn't have a huge significance, but the last 5-minute bar is suggesting that the small micro trend has now kicked back to the upside. So the upper levels look nicely back in the sights again here. And whether it goes through there is you know, obviously going to be a huge question. And I still would be a little bit doubtful that if it went through that point, that it would have a huge amount of follow through. I think maybe that's the point that we start to see the bears really start to kick in. But it may, you know, we might see another up day, and that's just going to be the state of the FTSE now for the whole of this negotiation period. Who knows? But let's bring the pound into play.
And sorry, Mohammed, every time I go to say hello to you, something else crops up and I have to ask Ash a question. So my apologies for the late response, but g'day, mate. How you doing?
And here's the pound. The pound has opened incredibly bearish, which actually sort of like starts to support that the FTSE could start to spring a trap to the upside. It's been very, very interesting, and this is the other difficult thing. The pound and the FTSE have been decoupling on their relationship recently. As the pound has moved to the upside, so is the FTSE. And what that's kind of led to is a difficult scenario to try and figure the move of one against the other. You know, the FTSE hasn't reacted to the pound in the way that it has in the past, but it might start doing so. You know, we're starting to see this pound weakness, and the FTSE is really starting to kind of test these upper levels again. It looks like it's just about tipped its way through, so we might be on for another leg up here. I think this area will be a bone of contention, but we may well be on for another leg higher with the FTSE, and there's a tiny bit more room to the upside here as well.
So what do you reckon about the pound this week, mate? Another good question.
Yeah, well, I think I think we will probably see the pound fluctuate on announcements here or there. I think if the DUP all of a sudden come out and say, yes, we accept that we will take Theresa May's deal, then the pound is likely to really start to pick up in pace. I think if we don't hear anything from one way or the other, then the pound may well weaken, because it would suggest that maybe Theresa May doesn't have the numbers. So obviously, if she doesn't have the numbers, then we don't see this going through. So I think it's going to be tetchy, and I think it's going to be news dependent, and I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to trade, and potentially impossible.
Well, it's not only Brexit, of course. We've got what have we got? We've got unemployment rates. Also tomorrow we've got CPI year on year. On Wednesday we've got the FOMC statement, just to throw another spanner in the works there, on Wednesday as well. And of course later in the week, retail sales on Thursday for the pound. And just to top it all off, we've got the MPC policy summary. So it could be a hell of a week for the pound.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's bring up the Forex Factory so we can have a look. So this is some of the bits and pieces Jeff's talking about. Nothing today, which again is going to be interesting for the volatility range. Tomorrow,
wages.
Yeah, average earnings, and it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you know, you could quite easily make an argument to say that none of these numbers will be have any kind of impact whatsoever, given the importance of what we have going on right now. So maybe this number doesn't do anything. The parliamentary Brexit vote, so they're listing it as tomorrow. That's the time I thought it was. So I think it probably is tomorrow we're looking at. Yeah, and FOMC on Wednesday, that could cause a little bit of volatility, as you say. CPI as well on Wednesday. Yes, there's actually quite a few data points, aren't there, here with the pound?
Oh yes, and of course, as I say, on Thursday it all wraps up with the MPC policy summary.
Yeah,
and the votes. Pretty clear there, they're not going to move the interest rates. That's kind of a given, so that's not going to make too much difference. But what they have to say will. So, pardon me. An interesting week coming up. I've got new candles. I better take a look. Okay?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Alrighty. Let me see if I can pinch screen to start with.
You should hopefully have it. I'll give it to you.
I have it. Okay. Let's go with the Aussie new 30-minute bars. Bit of a catch-22 situation here. Again, impossible for me to trade long here, and there's absolutely no interest in trading short either at this point. Although what we do have here is a bearish engulfing bar. So, pursuant to my normal course of reaction from here, I would look to see a little bit of a run to the downside, a pullback to the high side, find some resistance level. God knows where that is. It's probably in there somewhere. So down to here, back to here, then go short. But I've got to have a lower high. That's the absolute minimum I need here, is a lower high. So maybe we find this level even, then pull back to here. Is there a level above that? Question. That's what I was looking for. Not really. That's going to be the difficult part, is to find that lower high. Why will there be a lower high? So maybe we're, as I said before, I'm always looking for consolidation or a pullback when I get a bar such as that. So maybe we're just going to amble along here until we get to this confluence area over here. Maybe we're going up to here. You know, there's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers for me right now. But if I see on the 30-minute chart what I described, then I will look to trade a very, very quick trade to the short side, maybe target there. But that's about it on the Aussie for now. Euro dollar not dissimilar, in fact very, very similar, but I don't have any sign of reversal here right now. I've got a new high, I've got a little bit of a retracement back into that bull bar, but I haven't got a reversal in any way, shape or form. So as far as I'm concerned, the euro is still in bull land and headed for here. So I won't be looking to trade this short at this point in time. Can I get in long is the question. And right now, the answer is no. In fact, I don't see any way into this right now. Maybe a pull back to here might get me a little bit interested. But yeah, it would actually. In particular, if it found this confluence area in the daily pivot. So, you know, a few hours from now, in fact, a few candles from now, probably a day or so from now, if we're back here and retesting this level, there may be an opportunity to trade up to here. So that's what I'll be looking for. But at the moment, nothing. Cable, yeah, looks, it is going to be tricky. There's no question about that. Trading this cross, all eyes on news events. And as I said, there's nothing today on the pound. So we're just going to get whatever the market deems appropriate in terms of intraday trading, I suppose. You can see the weekly pivot standing out here fairly clearly. There's a bit of a rectangle forming around that area. I'd be quite okay to consider something short to the weekly pivot. I guess especially on the back of that bar there, if we were to get a bit of a retracement back to, let's say, this level and put in a lower high here, I don't see any reason why we couldn't trade that down to the weekly pivot. This candle here is also interesting if it were in one fell swoop to go back to here. So in other words, if I've got a close here right now on that level, I'd be probably okay placing an order underneath these two bars and trading it already to the weekly pivot. We'll see how that pans out. That is only 26 minutes away, and if we do get a candle such as that, look, it won't be any major dip into the pocket, I can assure you. I don't want to be putting too much risk into trading the pound at the moment, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. That would be okay.
Sorry, mate, you haven't got your screen.
Oh,
no visual.
Okay. Maybe I can fix that.
I mean, it's on you, but it's only on. That's it. No, that's me. Is it? Is that me? Are you looking at Forex Factory?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yes, maybe that's right then.
Hang on a sec. Let's try again. No, I'm looking at Forex Factory on your screen, mate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. That's better.
Are we good now? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry about all that. So I was only talking perhaps as ifs and all that sort of stuff. But this one, cable, you do need to have a visual on this. If this current bar were to close here or thereabouts, in particular if it tests that level, I would look to trade this short underneath here. So keep your eye on that one. We should be able to give you a result on that at showtime, end of showtime. So I'll come back to that at the top of the hour and let you know if I'm going to trade it. Aussie CAD's trying its little heart out to break clear here, but struggling at this level. Why? Why is the question? There's the answer. It's tried many, many times before to get through this level, and this is what really this trade is all about. It's a breakout of this level, and if it does break out, happy days, it'll be a great trade. If it doesn't break out, the likelihood is we're going back to the bottom of this range, and there I'll probably look for another long. After all, it's been a patient wait to get in here. Again, you know, we entered, or we put an order above this bar, we put an order above this bar, and finally on Thursday we put an order above this bar, and of course we broke through it. On Friday, pulled back pretty quickly, but it closed above the weekly pivot. That's why I had every confidence that this would go at least to this these highs here. Perhaps I should be taking profit. I think I'm only a few pips away from where I have got a profit level, which is plus 40. I don't know, I'm only about plus 30 at the moment, so I'll need another 10 pips out of this before I take profit. 30-minute chart, got nothing. The only thing I would suggest is there is a potential short here, but it's a long way away. You know, it's a long way before I'd look to trade the market short here. So nothing to do. Let's go through the rest of them. Pound yen. Again, at a resistance level, looking for some form of reversal here. You could argue that we've got a double top. I wouldn't go against that. What I would like to see here on a smaller time frame is maybe a level tested. Maybe this level here, DS1 tested, and very similar to the pound actually. Come and then pull back to the daily pivot if you like, put in a lower high, and away we can go short, but not before. Euro pound. Look, I'm keen to get back into this, Ash, and there's kind of signs that we're nearing a point where I might be able to do that.
Yeah.
We've got a bit of a confluence area here. You can see even through this level, there's a bit of resistance. So I think the weekly pivot, the resistance trend line that's coming through here, I'd be pretty keen to have a good look at that.
Difficult one this week again, isn't it?
It is this week, most definitely. But from a technical point of view, today, I'd be willing to trade the technicals. So, you know, even if in the next 2 or 3 hours we got up to here and showed signs of that level holding, I would look to trade that back short and hold on. But really, from a technical point of view here on the smaller time frame, which is the hourly chart, this one, what I really have got is a double bottom sitting here and a series of higher lows. But I'm getting potential lower highs, so it is tricky. It's not absolutely crystal clear, but this area is crystal clear to me. So no matter what, I'll be looking at this area with particular interest. The other thing that you could look at is this, which is something that's going in completely the opposite direction in terms of a chart pattern. Oh, I'll put them all in one go. Sorry, I'll do that again. So you've got an ascending triangle here, and you've got the double bottom, you've got the higher low. This is looking potential breakout to the high side, but it's still at resistance. So like I said, it's a little bit tricky. So this gives me another level of potential resistance. What I would therefore be looking for is to use this level, weekly pivot, top of the triangle, resistance trend line as a guide. So break, retest of this area gets me interested long. Break back underneath this area, retest from below gets me interested short. So that is a tricky scenario, I grant you, but it's also something that's very crystal clear to me. This level here is strong, so I'll be looking to trade off it either way. I just need the right signals at the right time, of course. Euro yen, looking to head towards this red line, which is around about on a smaller time frame, we'll be looking at 127, let's say. Coming to here, what have we got? We've got a level that we can't trade through. So that's an issue. So I need to pull back here, look to trade it long. But the pullback needs to be, yeah, see, it's, again, you've got a rectangle here. and these are the things that I look at. If I'm looking to trade at all, I'm looking to trade where the support and resistance is, and the resistance is definitely here. So I'll be looking in the first instance to trade it short, and in the second instance to trade it long. I know that sounds confusing, but that's exactly how I trade. Have I got anything to come off here? No, is the answer. Potential for a double top, most definitely, but I really think this is consolidation at the moment. It's not showing me anything that's clear. So get away from here, maybe give me the double top, give me a bearish engulfing bar, then a lower high. I can look to trade it short down to the bottom of the range, and then I'd be looking to do exactly the opposite. So that's the situation on Euro Yen. Euro CAD, again, at resistance. If you can't see that rectangle in there, I'll point that out to you on the smaller time frames. Go to the 30-minute chart. There's definitely equal lows here. The high side's a little bit trickier, I'd have to say. And yeah, actually that rectangle is not as clear as I thought. It's certainly looking foreboding on the 4-hour and daily charts, but it's not looking that serious. I suppose I could put it in and we can have a good look at it. So probably using that level through there and maybe that level through there. That'll kind of do me. So we've had a false break to the high side, a couple of attempts to the low side that have failed. Now a big breakout to the high side, which again has failed. So is the next one. This is starting to tell me that this level is strong and we're struggling to get through it. Wonder what caused that one. That was EuroCAD. Why did we break out there?
Oh yeah, we should talk about oil soon as well.
Okay, the memory's fading. But interestingly, we've come back below the weekly pivot. We've rejected that. Had another crack at it, having another crack at it again. This is an interesting area to look for trade. So I'd like to see price come back into here and then give me a lower high. Back under here, back under the weekly pivot, retest it from below, and then put in a reversal bar of some kind, short. That's where I'll be looking. I'll just do dollar yen, mate. This is a cross that's showing me both potential longs and potential shorts. Tried to trade this last week and didn't get away with it. Tried to trade this bar here, I think, long. No, sorry, I tried to trade this bar short and didn't get away with it. Now it's confusing me entirely. We're at a resistance level, as you can see. Trend line is holding at this point, and that's always a nice little area for me to say, well, okay, if this is to hold, we're going short clearly, but if it's not, we're going to test these highs, and therefore I look for a trade in that area. But this one's too tight, I think, to take. I'd have to risk about 60 odd pips, and my reward would only be 20 pips before I hit resistance, and its resistance has been support as well, so I can't trade that long. If I were to trade the opposite of that, short, again, I'd have to use that candle as my master candle, 60 pips going the other way into about 30 pips coming to the short side. So we're trapped here, we're landlocked, and I really can't trade dollar yen, but it's an interesting cross. If you look at this from a bigger picture perspective, you've got a double top sitting here at resistance. You've got a potential lower high sitting here at the same resistance level. The issue is weekly pivot and this low, but that's my favor. I think I'm looking at that from a technical point of view, and that's what I see. Double top, lower high, short. Maybe I should be tomorrow looking for a candle that breaks the weekly pivot. I'll have a look at that tomorrow. If this candle breaks the weekly pivot, or even the next day we get another rejection bar up here, I can still look to trade that short. I'm just a little bit wary on it at the moment. I want a better reward than I have risk to take that short. But I can see beautiful TP1 here at the monthly pivot, and if it continues to go we've got some nice levels down here as well. So that's my thoughts on the week thus far, mate. No trades at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with it. The FTSE is well and truly off.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, at this particular point, it's very overexcited. Very difficult to trade, but and a bit tricky to stomach, to be honest. You know, missing that one little entry all the way last Wednesday, all the way into last Wednesday, has proved to be pretty costly in many respects. But anyway, that's what it is. But
signs of reversal, did it?
I beg your pardon?
It didn't give any signs of reversal, so there was no short trade to be had. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean the one thing is we haven't closed. Now this is quite significant. I don't know if you can see my time here, but it's coming up. Here's my clocks here. It's coming up to. I don't know if I can pin this. Oh, maybe I can. I'm not sure I can pin these or not. If we can't pin them, but you can see 10 minutes. It's coming up to the close of a 4-hour bar, and now this does become a very significant time frame, because as we sit right now this can change in 10 minutes. People make decisions towards the end of bars more often than in the middle of the bar, but this is the 4-hour bar that we have right now, and the 4-hour bar is about to close in about 4 minutes, and this area is such a significant zone. You know, if this drops all the way back down to this point, that is starting to suggest that we have genuinely hit the high. If it doesn't, then there could be some significant room. This is going to be a difficult area to judge, you know, this high here, because of the way that price action has switched because of the expiration date. But maybe that is what we're looking for, because this is a futures chart on across the world, you know, right across the board. It's not that this particular broker has given a weird futures chart. This is the futures chart across the board. So it might be that we get all the way up to this point before we start to look for anything that is significant downside. It is fair. I mean, it's not hugely irregular, but it is fairly irregular. You see that they do happen. You know, this move to the upside here was 200 pips. But what was more significant about this is that it was a lot smoother to the upside. It extended, retraced to where it came from. Extended, retraced to where it came from. It did then start to take off, but we got some sort of a retracement down to, well, close to that point. But I suppose this is where it came from, and then it started to turn around. With this one, we've not really had any of it. You know, it's just been gone. So this particular area is very concerning, and it's really waiting for something clearer to suggest what's going to happen, because it's an uncomfortable looking market, and I guess this is really kind of the manifestation of what we've got with the fundamentals, i.e. Brexit. You know, the Brexit fundamental makes this just an impossible market, in my opinion, to try and trade, because you, as I said before, are looking for long. There's no two ways about it. You are looking for long, but to try and get in long here is so dangerous. Yet, if this is anything to go by, there's so much upward emotion here. There may just not be a chance to get back in, and with a lack of volatility, the diminished amount of traders that are out there, maybe those guys might be enough to push this market higher without any true pullback.
Yes, may well.
So it's irregular, but it can happen. Irregular doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Now, if we look at the market breadth here, the market breadth on the FTSE 100. This is the list of all the stocks in the FTSE 100. And when we look at the market breadth is green right up until 69. So that is telling us that 70% of the 100 stocks, so if there's 69, so 69, 70% of stocks are all bullish right now. So market breadth is also very bullish. Nothing's really kind of taken off, and obviously this is a soft indicator, because what can happen is that one of the bigger weighted markets on the FTSE 100 could be in this lower area down here. But HSBC, for example, or if you saw BP down here, then that would be significant. But just as a general kind of rule of thumb, looking at market breadth is going to be one of the metrics that's going to give us an idea of how strong a trend is. And according to this, the trend to the upside is incredibly robust right now. So certainly looking for downside would be a pretty dangerous proposition.
Danger it would be, and no sign of reversal, as I said, but it is at the top of the rectangle. So I'd be, if it's me, I'm looking for that reversal.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't look like coming anytime soon.
No, it doesn't, mate. But the thing with this is that because of the irregularity of the move to the upside, it can come in a blink of an eye with this kind of stuff. When the market is so overextended, what that is saying is that it's also overconfident. And overconfidence is one of the biggest killers to making money. Whether you're overconfident about your strategy or overconfident because you're so happy with how things are going in the stock market that you're just going to buy with no question of it coming back. But it is a very, very dangerous and tenuous position to be in. And I would suggest that anybody that was trading this to the downside would be wouldn't be in the worst position in the world, because this is, as I say, just expressing some incredible confidence here in it, and it's a market which could now turn on a penny because of that. Let's have a quick chat about oil.
Oil, song.
Now, where's the oil? Here we go. WTI. So WTI, now we've had some news from the OPEC countries recently. Russia specifically has recently said that it doesn't believe that that cutting supply would be necessarily the best thing to do right now. So because of that, it's kind of saying that June would probably be the time that that they would discuss maybe reining back a bit the supply, and because that hasn't really filtered into the charts just yet. Maybe we've just started to see a bit of a lower high. It's a bit scruffy, but maybe we started to see a bit of a lower high here. We could maybe look at the hourly chart to see whether there's anything of a clearer picture. And it's not amazing, but I would suggest that there's probably a little bit of a shelf here along that support line. Let's bring up a pivot as well. The hourly with pivots, yeah, it's on that daily pivot. So I think that there's a fairly strong indication here that with Russia holding off decreasing the supply out there, and maybe the fact that oil has, it's had a really good boost to the upside as well. I think a close beneath the daily pivot would suggest at least coming down to the weekly pivot, and then maybe we start to see this particular market retrace a little bit more significantly from there, because June's a long time away, and it looks like
it's the only level that I can see. I'm looking at my weekly chart. It's the only level that is in the way, frankly.
Yeah. So, level, is in the way, isn't it?
Yeah, the market should see that, and in my opinion, look to the downside in the short term.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've got a reason for it to happen as well. So I think you're probably right. I'll make you right on that. I think that the market will probably ease to the downside from this particular point.
That's a big part of my Aussie CAD trade as well. If I'm right there, that should help my Aussie CAD trade.
This is why I was going to mention it, mate. Yeah, this is exactly it. It seems the CAD has become a bit of a sick note, and it only really does take maybe some OPEC announcements to the negative side for, I think, the CAD to be properly affected. Also to the downside. So I would suggest the same thing. You're looking at Aussie CAD long, obviously.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're in that as of Friday.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. All right. Amazing.
I'm just having a look at cable at the moment because I said I would trade this if I got the right signal. We've got about 3.
All right. Let me pass you over the screen.
And it's not looking great, I'd have to say.
There you go.
Can you see it? There you go. All right. So what we're looking for is a close, or at least a test of here and a close above maybe halfway. I wanted to see this candle get into the previous bar by greater than 50%, and a close on this level would have been superb, and it would have instigated me to place an order short under here with an obvious target at the weekly pivot. With what 2 minutes to go, that's unlikely to be the case. So there won't be a trade here. It's not going to stop the market falling here, of course, the fact that I'm not trading it, but it's not an area I would like to trade at unless I got that signal. And the reason for that is if the bulls are actually going to bounce off these pivots, or this pivot, the daily pivot, then they would simply continue on with the job after they've pulled back to here. But if they're not serious and the market comes back to here, my contention would be that it would accelerate down to this level. So that's the basis of that trade, basically. But it's not going to happen with 1 minute and 20 seconds to go, one wouldn't think, unless there's a massive turn of events in the next minute. So I'm going to be on the sidelines for the moment, mate. Aussie's coming off. Cable we know about. Euro. No, still no sign of reversal there for me. Aussie CAD's coming off. Pound yen. Wow, it's like a replica, isn't it? Pound yen and pound US dollar are exactly the same. It hasn't done it. No, I've got nothing.
Yeah, and this is the FTSE. FTSE's going to close at these highs here. It's got about 40 seconds to take all of, looks like about 25 pips to the downside, which is very, very unlikely to happen. I mean, it's going to take a huge surge from the sellers at this point to push this market back down again. So the FTSE rally continues, and it may well be this for the rest of the day. I think we need to watch this particular market, because back to the cash again, cash futures hybrid. This daily bar is the significant one. It's just a little bit above the 72.64 level, and a close above that particular point, certainly a close up at these highs, would suggest that this market is probably gone. But there's a lot of twists and turns this week, so we've got to be very, very very speculative. I just sometimes the markets do just confound you, don't they? Just look at it and think. My personal opinion would be the uncertainty would put these things on hold a little bit, and maybe that does eventually manifest itself in the market. But certainly the way it is right now, there's such huge confidence out there in this market that it's. Yeah, huge risk on. It's really ever since that US-China trade announcement, which hasn't actually become a reality as yet. So nothing is holding this back. So yeah, there's a huge amount of confidence out there, which is worrying to say the least. Worrying because it's going to be difficult to get on board, but secondly, worrying because the a little tip in this, which is really what makes it difficult to get on board. A little tip in this, and it's just going to dive to the downside. So we will have to just wait and see if this unfolds and just becomes a little bit more palatable for us. But as of right now, the market is in incredibly confident mood, and we just have to leave it alone.
All right, mate. One more thing before I do go. That scenario I just described on cable is still possible to manifest. It doesn't look like it at the moment, but if this were to turn into the hourly chart now, if this
let's have a look.
Were to turn into a bull bar and test exactly the same level, no, as I speak, that's not looking likely. But if it were, it could still be a bullish bar. It's getting too deep now. It's getting too close to the pivot. But I'd be still risking 35 pips to get about the same. It's a 1-to-1 scenario. at the moment if this were to turn bullish and close here. But any lower, you're 1-to-1. If you haven't got 1-to-1, don't even consider it. So that's me, mate.
Good stuff. Well, we'll be back in half an hour, won't we, for the show with Paul. And let's see if anything else happens here. But certainly right now, it looks like the accelerator pedal is down, and until this eases back, we have got nothing to do.
Okie dokie. That's not surprising on a Monday for me, but we'll see how the week pans out.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, buddy.
So catch you tomorrow, guys.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Same trade time, same trade channel. We'll do it again, and looking probably, well, in fact, I'll be gone Wednesday, but probably Wednesday or Thursday at this stage. But you never know. You never know. Things can change pretty quick.
Roger D.
Okay, mate. I'll see you in a little while.
Okay. Bye for now, everyone.